Hey, what's up, comrades? So, we are getting to Secret Wars. Yes, finally we're at Secret Wars, I guess. That's a thing. I'm never a big fan of Secret Wars, to be completely honest. It's alright, I guess. But people love it. It's 12 issues, so this one is going to be kind of long. It might not be that long, because a lot of it's just like shonen anime battles. Just fight, 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 stuff like that. It's got so many characters, but like the big stars. Wolverine has like a significant role. Captain America, Doom, and Galactus are really like the big hard hitters, and then Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four like pops in later. It makes some like drastic changes. I mean, there's some characters in here like Iron Man who's like barely existing. At the end of the day, we get a lot of changes. We get several changes. We get Spider-Man gets his like Venom suit essentially, which is a huge game changer in his whole situation. Colossus for the X-Men, which is the thing we actually care about. He's been having like some issues with Kitty, partially because he is like 3 or 4 years older than her, and they're both teenagers, right? So that can be like kind of dramatic. And she's like they're totally different people. And then there's some back and forth. And then he finds like another love on this alien planet, and then he's like questioning his whole thing with Kitty, and that comes up later. And then there's a new Spider Woman who shows up, who she's cool. I think she eventually goes by like Arachnid or something. She wears like a black costume as well that is not symbiote related. She Hulk joins the Fantastic Four because Ben Grimm has some stuff. I'm trying to think if there's any like dramatic changes from this. There's a whole thing with like Doom. Um, and yeah, Enchantress actually plays a pretty significant role, to be completely honest. And then there's a couple new villains that are created by Doom during this time: Titania and Volcana, and then the Molecular Man, who is like the most powerful superhero because he can like affect molecules, which is like everything. So that's a pretty big deal. But let's start with issue one. So issue one begins. We get this kind of like oh look, everyone's on this spaceship and everyone's teleported to like this area, and then we get all the heroes are there, and part of the hero group is Magneto, and that's kind of like concerning for the other heroes, right? And then in the villain group, yes, there's a villain group. We got Galactus, and then we got a bunch of nobodies. We got some hard hitters like Doom and Doctor Octopus, Molecule Man, Kang the Conqueror, who gets disappeared pretty quick. I'm sure what these dudes are called. They're like the Wrecking Crew or something. I think that's what they're called. The Enchantress is there, all that good stuff. So they're on two different like spaceships looking at each other, and then all of a sudden like there's like a universe that's destroyed or created or crafted. Like the whole universe is like disappeared, and so they're just in like the blackness with no stars, and they're like, oh, what's going on? And then a world's created, battle world, and then immediately the villains start fighting each other, and the heroes are just kind of watching them. And Doctor Doom is trying to get Molecular Man to do something because he's like a coward. I don't think he's ever showed up in the X-Men. And he launches them at Ultron. Ultron like destroys, or not Ultron. He launches Ultron at Galactus, who destroys Ultron, and then everyone's like, "Oh my gosh!" And then everyone kind of gets like, and then Galactus goes to like fight the Beyonder, who's like the one who summoned all them, and Doctor Doom goes too, and then Doctor Doom and Galactus get like smashed back into like they get smashed down to like this battle world. Meanwhile, the heroes and the villain groups get sent down. The hero group immediately is like questioning Magneto, and then the X-Men cry "Racismus." Excuse me, and then Magneto kind of like he's like, I'm nopes out of this situation, like adios. And then the X-Men have some concerns about this as well. Doom goes to like his base. Galactus is kind of knocked out. When he gets to like the evil base, there's like all the villains are there, and he immediately asserts his like dominance. And it's like, you will follow me. And then Kang's like, I don't know if I'm going to follow that guy. And then the heroes like show up, and the villains and the heroes start like fighting each other, and it's just like fight, 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 fight. And that takes us to issue number 2. Yes. Okay. Each one of these issues just leads right into the next. So we're back at the battle. It's just going. It's kind of silly. There's a Lockheed is shooting fire magic, and there's like tech stuff, and people are getting blown up. Hulk's throwing stuff. Fight, fight, fight. Doom's off doing his own thing, just kind of like watching Galactus, who eventually just like stands up, but he stands up in like the silliest way possible. Which is like he like levitates himself up to standing position. And the Doom's trying to talk to Galactus. Galactus doesn't give a fuck. He just like wanders off to some mountain. And then Doom goes and breaks into like this base and gets Ultron and fixes him up so that he can fight some more. We head back. The heroes and villains are fighting, fight, 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 fight. Let's see, nothing. Like Enchantress gets hit by the She-Hulk. A bunch of the villains get captured by the heroes, and then they go to like their own little kind of defense base, and they kind of assign like Captain America to be their leader. And they're all talking about stuff and thinking about what they want to do and making plans and whatnot. Meanwhile, Magneto's found like a third base in this like strange tentacle lake. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, the villains that didn't got captured, they returned to the villain base, and Doom's there, and they're like, "We'll fucking kill you, Doom." And then Ultron like blasts the shit out of him, and he's like, "You will obey me. Ultron's my bodyguard." And they're like, "Okie dokie." So then they go and they see Galactus just like standing on a mountain doing his thing. Meanwhile, Magneto's doing his thing. We're bouncing back and forth a lot. The X-Men Reed and Cyclops are just talking about life, and we find out that Reed Richards, if you haven't been following the Fantastic Four, which we have not in this series of videos, he's about to have his daughter. I'm trying to remember what her name is. There's Reed Richards. No, though it's the mutant son that he has, and then he has a daughter too. I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but there's a whole thing with that, which I don't know if we'll get into. A spoiler alert, I guess. Yes. Oh no. So we do know that his oldest son, God, I can't remember his name, ends up with that as part of the mutant resistance. Has that happened yet? He's a mutant anyway. So in like the dark futures, he ends up. I think he ends up with Rachel. Not Summers. Does she go by Rachel Summers? I thought she went by Rachel Gray. I can't remember. Well, anyway, we'll get there. But she ends up hooking up with Franklin. That's his name, Franklin Richards. And then he ends up being like Kang in like multiple universes or times or something. Some bizarre bullshit, comic bullshit. And everyone's just like chit-chatting. And then Magneto shows up and he like, I don't know, he just like throws Spider-Man around and they get into like a little silly argument, and then he takes off, and then Ben Grimm goes to like throw something at Magneto, and then he transforms back into human, and everyone's like, oh, human, and that's amazing. And so then they look up and they see Galactus stand on the mountain as well. And then there's a storm begins, like not storm is there, but it's like a lightning rainstorm. And Magneto's just like chilling, looking at it. He's like lounging in like this lounge chair area, and then he summons like this thing he created, and inside is the Wasp. And then he like summons her, and she wanders over, and he's like drinking and eating, I don't know, Beyonder food or whatever. And she's like, what the heck? And she tries to zap him, and they get to like a funny argument, and he's like being very sexual as Magneto does, and she's being charmed by his like masculinity and stuff. And then Thor is outside of the storm just like having a blast, like smiling and shit. Meanwhile, She-Hulk is helping like reconstruct something or doing something, and it's a lot of this. A lot of people standing around talking about like the same bullshit over and over again. At some point, Spider-Man's like meandering about, and he finds the X-Men plotting to go join Magneto, and so he jumps down and like fights with them, and it's Spider-Man, so he's everyone's favorite. So he kind of gets away, but then Professor X like makes him forget what he saw, and Cyclops goes and gives Richards like some. Don't worry about anything that's going to happen. Well, everything's going to be great. And then they get in their ship and they take off. Meanwhile, over at Magneto and Wasp, he is like seducing her, and they're making out and probably having sex and stuff. Meanwhile, at Doombase, this is where he gets like the ladies. One's like this really wafy looking skinny chick. Another one's kind of she looks like a bodybuilder, to be completely honest. And he like found them somewhere, and he's going to transform them into superheroes using this like technology. And so he turns a really small wafy chick into like Titania, who's like, super strong and kind of like, I think she becomes like a villainess of the She-Hulk series. And then Volcana, who I don't remember her ever showing up outside of here, and that like Secret Wars 2, which was kind of silly, to be completely honest. And so Volcana can use the power. She's like magma, only like much stronger, and her abilities like volcano things. And then Titania is like super strong and tough. And so they go out, and all the boys are like whatever. And then she like fights with them or whatever. And then Volcana like immediately falls in love with Molecule Man, who falls in love with her because she's got a nice rack, obviously, like super nice rack. And to be fair. And so okay, so that becomes like a thing forever. Meanwhile, Thor is checking out the prisoners like Kang and part of the wrecking crew or whatever. Past block cells where Ball, King the Conqueror. Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't call him that. He says Pile Driver, Bulldozer, Thunderball, and there's like Absolute Man or something. Anyway, and he finds the Enchantress in like a Snow White coffin for some reason. I mean, she's in like the same stasis cells that everyone else is in, but it makes it look like Snow White. So he unlocks like her. They go have a chit chat. Hulk is like thinking about stuff while Captain America's like lounging, and then they they get attacked by Doom's crew. Yes, by the new ladies, and the new ladies like beat the shit out of them, including. And then we get Monica. We get like some fan service with Monica Rambeau as Captain Marvel, just hot tub in it. She's like pure light is her abilities, right? So it's she can just like summon clothes, I guess. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I read all these Avengers. Anyway, so the heroes are kind of getting the shit kicked out of them, and they get beat up pretty good, except for the X-Men who noped out there before. And then they explode the base. And so then after they rescued all like their friends, and then Molecule Man and Volcana are like flirting some more. The heroes did kind of escape, and they're super upset about that because, and not all of them, a lot of them are pretty beat the shit out of, but like Hulk carrying like 6 dudes, it's carrying a guy, okay, because the X-Men are gone, and then they start tossing stuff at him, and Hawkeye's like blowing the shit out of it, and Monica and Tony are like blasting the shit out of stuff, and then like Titania throws like a whole fucking mountain or something. Let's see, Suddenly Unbelievable Mountain Range, something. And it drops right on top of them. And that did it. They're finished. Yeah, it was Titania. And they're like, yay. And then that doesn't include Thor and Enchantress, who are like off on their own, like about to be smoochy time. But then with the destruction of the mountain, they both like teleport back over to where everything's going on. And obviously it's just Thor versus all these supervillains. And so he gets disappointed, like Enchantress tricked him, when it's like, in reality, bro, you like literally went with her, you dumb motherfucker. Anyway, they fight. And then Thor finally just like takes he like takes off. It looks originally like Ultron blasts him and kills him, but we found out later that Thor escaped that whole machination. And then Kang, who was trying to kill Doom earlier, he gets killed by Ultron because Doom's like, I don't allow something, blah 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 blah. Meanwhile, the X-Men are just traveling about over Magneto's base. Colossus is thinking about Kitty and all that kind of nonsense and whatnot. And so they meet up with Magneto, and Magneto is like crafting a comb for Janet Van Dyne, who is the Wasp. And then the X-Men show up and is like, what up, baller? And then the Wasp like smacks the shit out of Magneto, and then blasts everybody as she like flies the fuck out of there, and it's just like, okay. That's completely ridiculous. But we then go back over to everyone in the mountain. Monica like casts a light spell, and then Hulk is literally holding the whole mountain up by himself. Everyone's like passed the fuck out, and they're like, oh, what are we gonna do? And then Reed and Captain America and Spider-Man are doing like some shenanigans, and they're using Iron Man and Monica to like charge things, and they like blast this hole in the mountain. And right as they do, they run into Thor, and Thor's like, haha, well met, something. They then go and they find this like cute little village, like this alien village, and they carry their friends there. And there's a lady there. Her name is like Shaj. It's like Sasjz or something. These people don't speak their language. They have that kind of cat eyes and white hair. But she's a healer, and so she starts healing everybody up. And then her and Johnny Storm get like all smoochy. And then Ben transforms back into his robot thing. Or not his robot thing, his like rock form, and he's pissed off about that. And then Reed looks up and sees Galactus. And he's like, oh no! And that wraps up issue number 4. Issue number 5 picks up with everybody staring at Galactus and being concerned because he's summoned his like world-devouring spaceship thingy over to this side of the universe, and everyone's like, oh no! And then Johnny goes to like give some smooches to this Saj chick, who looks like your aunt from like the 1980s, to be completely honest, like too much lipstick and like too much forehead. She's a nice rack though, so I see why these guys are into it. And then we get like a recap, because it's been like 5 issues, about everything that went on, and then they smooch. Meanwhile, Colossus is like thinking about smooching Kitty, and he's Satapotamus when Xavier summons him and the rest of X-Men. They talk about, look at this thing that's occurred. We need to go and do stuff, so go do stuff. Also, meanwhile, at the villain's place, Molecule Man's getting like, him and his girlfriend with a nice rack. What's her name? Volcana something. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Anyway, they're like taunting her or him, and she's about to fight him, and Molecule Man just like fucks him up, or he's about to, he like fucks one up real hard and like smashes him on the ground, and then Volcana like pounds him with her fucking foot. And Titania's watching because her and Volcana are like super best friends back in the day, and all the wrecking crew's like, all right, no, we're best friends forever, bye. And then Molecule Man creates like some ridiculous looking chariot, and him and Volcana like take off, and then Titania like calls them bitches. She picks up a tree. Meanwhile, Doom is doing Doom stuff, and Enchantress comes up to like flirt with him. She's the most beautiful woman that's ever existed or whatever. And then he's like, get out of here, harlot. Back over, let's see, more energy. Okay, so everyone's just kind of checking on Ultron. Reed tries to go and see what's going on with that. At some point, Ultron sees Magneto and Professor X fucking around, and so they find out because he blasts shit out of him, and then he blasts shit out of Reed, and then he sends some sort of robot guy to fight the Avenger group at this point in this little village. So they fight. Then the bad guys show up and they fight. So there's more fighting, and they fight, and then the X-Men show up and they start fighting. So it's fight. And then Galactus is just like ignoring all of them, doing his thing. And at some point, Enchantress like teleports all the bad guys out of there, and then the X-Men like nope out of there, leaving Colossus, who got jacked up pretty good. And it's like, oh, why do we leave or whatever, blah 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 blah. And then Xavier's like, oh, we left him because we know the Avengers are going to take care of him, and they have a healer there. We don't have any way to heal him, so he'll be taken care of in that regard. And then Colossus like gets healed up by this woman and sees her, and he like falls instantly in love with her. So now we have like a love triangle, which is fun. And Doctor Doom is meandering. We then flip back over to Doctor Doom was just meandering around his base thinking about like stupid bullshit, like about the Beyonder and Galactus and whatnot. All right, we pick up excuse me. Goodness. Issue number 6 with Janet Van Dyne. She's flying around in her like janky shuttlecraft. It's not working out too well for her. And then she blasts some alien creatures, and then she runs into it's the Lizard. Oh no, the Lizard is a Spider-Man villain. It's a Dr. Connors, I think is his name, who got transformed with some sort of experiment that he did into the Lizard. So we take off from there, and then we see Doom resurrecting Claw. You remember Claw? We actually do remember Claw. Claw is that Sonic guy from like, golly, Dazzler 12, maybe? Hold on. Maybe they say it here. At the end of the last issue. Okay, he tells the story about Dazzler, but we don't get the issue number. Okay, he recalls the whole story where Dazzler like overwhelmed him with sound and it like jacked him up and he turned into sound waves. And then at some point when she was working for Galactus, which happened later on in like the fantastic Dazzler run that I'm going through periodically as part of the X-Men adventures, she becomes the herald, or she has the chance to become the herald of Galactus, and she like blasts him at some point, and so then somehow Claw got transferred as like a being of sound into Galactus, and then something with like now he's here, I guess. It's like some nonsensical comic bullshit. Anyway, so now Claw, who's like completely out of his mind, is working for Doom as well as like crazy person, and they're just like chatting about like the shit that's been going on, and then he sends him down, and these characters are like yada yada yada, and then Ultron, Titania gets like mad and wants to like fight Claw or something, and didn't already kill King. Remember, let's do as he says. I don't know exactly what her deal was. She was like really pissed off that Claw's there, and then she like punches Ultron's arm and he like resurrects it, and he's about to blast the shit out of her when Volcana's like, stop. Just stop. Meanwhile, back over with Janet, she's like super befriended the Lizard Man. They're like best friends now, and she's like treating him well, and they're walking off together. Meanwhile, the X-Men are just like lounging, and then again we get like some more thoughts. Like Professor X is trying to examine what the bad guys are doing, and Enchantress like senses it and like pushes it back because she has that kind of power, and the rest of the X-Men are just kind of chilling. Storm and him get into like a fight about who's leading the team because he wants to send off Rogue, Cyclops, and Wolverine to go fight some bad guys who are kind of doing some recon on their own. And then she's like, I'm the battle leader. And he's like, I'm the battle leader here. And they go back and forth about that. That becomes like an issue that arises later on, and particularly in the X-Men comics. Meanwhile, Colossus is recovering and he's having dreams. He's like mixing up Zaj and Kitty because he's obviously in love with Zaj, and she comes and heals him some more, and then he's like checking her out, and he's like, oh, I'm so in love, and then Human Torch comes over and they make out, and then Colossus is like, oh, wah wah wah. Captain America's doing the army thing. Meanwhile, that he's setting up like a little sand table so he can explain like their positions and what they need to do. And there's like a whole argument. They got to go rescue Wasp. What happened to Wasp? And then the Hulk's like pissed off, and then Hawkeye's like pissed off, and then people are like chit chatting. And then Iron Man tries to hit on Monica Rambeau, and she's like, nah, I'm good, Whitey. And then that's not what she says. But then, so Molecule Man, Titania, and then the two of the Wrecking Crew, I can't remember, like Absorbing Man, I think is one of them. They have run in with Rogue, Cyclops, and Wolverine, and they actually beat the X-Men like beat the shit out of them. And Wolverine like claws up Molecule Man really bad, so he's like bleeding to death, and then they take off, and then Cyclops goes up to like this volcano and blasts the shit out of it. Meanwhile, Lizard Man and Wasp are hanging out together, and then they're like being super best friends, and then the Wasp gets blasted by the pile driver or somebody. And then Lizard Man gets super mad and he goes to fight them, but then he gets like gobbled up by like this crazy like red tank. Fucking, it looks like a fucking. If you ever played Rifts, the tabletop role playing game, like not the Confederacy, what were they called? The Coalition or something, like the Nazi rat-in for like how the humans acted in America. It looks like one of their vehicles. Like it's so absurd looking. It's pretty awesome. And then we finally get like a little shot of the Avengers hanging out in the town, and there's like a stranger who's watching them from the dark. And that stranger happens to be Spider-Woman, but not Spider-Woman Jessica Drew. This is Spider-Woman. Does she say her name here? She's from Denver, which is fun, I guess. But she's from like the regular Earth. She's just like minding her own business, doing Spider-Woman stuff that none of these people have like heard of her. She's super strong, and she's kind of got like Spider-Man stuff going on. And Spider-Man's like, wow, she's got some stuff. And then that crazy bulldozer looking thing like shows up, and they have the Wasp, and then they toss her out, and then they ride off after blasting a bunch of stuff. And they come up, and Janet's like dead. And so Zod tries to help her, but no, she's like dead. And so everyone's super mad and super sad, and they're talking about getting vengeance and all this stuff. And Captain America's like, no, we got to stay here and watch Galactus and do whatever we can on that. Meanwhile, the X-Men are rolling back over to Magneto's base when Charles is like, no, keep going, fight those guys, let's get them while we got them. And then Storm, Nightcrawler, Magneto, and Charles all head over as well to meet up with them. Meanwhile, the bad guys they're in a lot of pain. Mostly Molecule Man's like bleeding out, and then Octavius, Titania, and the Absorbing Man are all like talking about how he's probably going to die. Claw and Volcana are watching this, and Volcana's like, send me over there, and Claw's like, I'm crazy, I don't know how to do anything, whoop, 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 whoop. And then so Volcana runs into the Enchantress, who's like just drinking wine and chilling on like I don't know what to fucking call this thing, like a therapist couch. And she's like, ugh, mortal, get away from me, you stink. And she's like, please, Enchantress, send me to my boyfriend. I'll do anything. And she's like, anything? He's like, I'll give you everything. And she's like, yes, indeed. And so she sends her over there. And Volcana's like super sad. And then they get blasted down by the X-Men. And then the fight with the X-Men begins. And the villains are getting, it's like fight. And then eventually Volcana like blasts this huge volcano thing. And then they all take off. And then Magneto, Charles, the X-Men crew, with Wolverine and Nightcrawler kind of knocked out, they head back their way. Meanwhile, Doom is watching with a lot of interest what's going on with Ultron, and he actually has gone up to Ultron's base, and he's trying to sneak around in there, and he's the whole thing with the volcano and everything is like a distraction. He's like, I'll be good. And then Ultron's sitting there looking at the volcano and thinking about, I don't know, what he's going to have for dinner. And then he notices there's like a fly in his house, and he goes, badam! And sends Doom like flying back into the planet, like almost dead. Meanwhile, the rest of the villains get back to the base. Absorbing Man is like missing an arm. Molecule Man's obviously in a lot of hurt. And then they're like, I'll try to help us. And he's like, go fuck yourselves. I only work for Doom. They're like, and then the Enchantress is like, oh, I could help your boyfriend. And Volcana's like, please do. And she's like, well, I already have everything from you, so why would I? And the Volcana's about to go fight Enchantress, and Enchantress just laughs while Titania like drags her away. Meanwhile, the Absorbing Man takes his because he turns into like stone or whatever. He absorbs things and then becomes that. So he takes his stone arm and like holds it against his arm, and then transforms back, and it causes a lot of pain, but he's able to like survive, right? So his arm isn't gone forever. Meanwhile, the Lizard Man's like fighting dudes, and like he's like wasp, and so they knock him and throw him into like a cage, and then Claw. Oh no, we haven't got to that point yet. And then one of these douchebags, Bulldozer, he goes to his room and he's like tuckered out because he was holding down the Lizard Man and fighting with him. And then the She-Hulk shows up because she's here for vengeance, and she blasts through the door and she's beating the shit out of him. And the rest of the Wrecking Crew shows up, she beats the shit out of them, and Titania shows up, and all the Wrecking Crews like beat the shit out of. And Titania's like, I'll get you, and then they start fighting, and Titania actually beats up on the She-Hulk, and then Dr. Ock and Absorbing Man show up as well to help out. And then the Enchantress is just like chilling by the pool, like being beautiful and stuff. And then she hears Doom moving around. She goes out and he's like fucking dying. And she's like, what's wrong with that motherfucker? And then She-Hulk gets like almost killed. Meanwhile, Captain America is just like enjoying the sunset, watching Galactus do his thing. When Hawkeye and the rest of the Avengers and like Fantastic Four that are still here come up, and they're like, hey, we need to go avenge something and do this and do that. And then they're trying to convince him, and he's like, no, we have to not follow our hearts. We have to do the thing that is the right thing to do. And then Colossus, who's wandering around the town, sees Saj, and she's used up so much for like healing magic, she passes out, so he grabs her. Meanwhile, the X-Men contact Captain America, and they're like, hey, go rescue your friend. Go check out what's going on over there. We will watch Galactus and let you know. And Captain America's like, thanks, Professor. Let's go. Avengers assemble. That's not what he says, but that's pretty much what it means. So issue 8 picks up. We're on their way, or the Fantastic Four and the Avengers are on their way to fight the villains. They come crashing in, and Enchantress has had like better days. She's just like drunk, like watching Thor blast into the building, and she's like, I don't give a fuck. And then she like stumbles and falls because she's so wasted, and she's like, oh, I'm so sad. Meanwhile, Volcana, let's see. So Volcana's hanging out with Molecule Man. He's still hurt really bad. Claw releases Lizard. Because he doesn't think anyone should be caged. And then the rest of them who are fighting She-Hulk, they hear all the noise, and so they run off. Ultron's protecting Doom while he's like barely holding it together. Then there's fight. Enchantress seduces Hulk and then tries to seduce Captain America, but his heart is too pure with like Christian love or something, so he can overwhelm her thing. Spider-Man beats up on Titania because he's so fast. Ben transforms back into his human form, and then Ben and Hawkeye get surrounded by Claw and Lizard, but I think that situation kind of resolved itself. I don't remember. Anyway, Iron Man gets like completely fucked by Volcana, partially because Molecule Man he's like woken up enough to create like a shield that is impenetrable. And so Volcana is able to just blast everybody as they come in like the door with her volcano magic, except dun dun dun, Monica Rambeau. That's right, because she's pure light and light can go through his barrier. And so she runs over and grabs Molecule Man, and the Volcano's like, no, stop, please stop. We'll do anything. I surrender. You're hurting my boy. And then Monica's like, oops, I didn't mean to kill him. And she doesn't, don't worry. And then Spider-Man finishes up with Titania and like tosses her out the window, and she's all sad and eponymous about that. And then they head over to Doom, and it's Captain America and Human Torch, and they're fighting Ultron, and Ultron is beating the shit out of him. And then Captain America's like, use your supernova powers or whatever. And he's like, no, that'll hurt you. And he's like, no, my shield's impenetrable. I'll be okay. And he is, because they do it. And then, God, what's his name? It's Sue, Johnny, Ben, and... Oh, Johnny, that's what his name is. So Johnny Storm is like, oh, man, I got Ultron, but I'm all tuckered out. And Captain America's like, you're good, kid. Don't worry about it. And he runs in and sees Doom, and Doom's just like, holding his hand in his head, and he's like barely functional. And Captain America's like, yeah, he's harmless now. Just leave this be. Meanwhile, Reed has found Hawkeye, Ben Grimm, Claw, and Lizard, and they're all playing patty cake or some crazy nonsense. Monica finds She-Hulk, so they're able to like rescue her before she dies, and they put her in like a chamber. Which is, there's some lore breaking here, because at some point, so she's got gamma radiation, right? That's why she turns into She-Hulk. They put her in one of these healing chambers, and then later on the Hulk gets injured, and they cannot put him in these healing chambers because of gamma radiation nonsense. So just want to point that out here before I forget. All right, so they capture all the bad guys. They took over Doom Base. They're all hanging out talking about it. Meanwhile, Colossus grabs Saj. He like races her back to her place. They do like the drugs, and so they like their minds connect and they're able to see everything. And then he's like in love or whatever, and he's holding her in my beautiful sleep and something. And then everyone's kind of talking about the Wasp and being dead. And then Monica and Hawkeye walk into like the room where her like dead body is supposed to be, and she's like totally fine. And she's like, oh, I must be fine. Nothing happened. I have like a bruise on my head. Meanwhile, the X-Men are like lounging, like literally. Rogue and Storm are just like lounging, and Nightcrawler is totally fine, and Wolverine's fine, and they're watching Ultron, and they're like, oh no, look there. And then Reed is working on, oh, that's right, Iron Man is not Tony Stark right now. He is he's War Machine, who is golly, War Machine is, I can't believe it slipped my mind. He's War Machine from like the movies, if you remember. I forgot he was him at this time, right? Okay. Anyway, so they're chit chatting. Oh, does he say it right here? Suit of Iron Man? No, he just calls him Iron Man. Okay. Anyway, so he is. Oh, and there's a whole thing about Reese Smith. Like, oh, but you never expect to see a black man under here. And Reed is like, I don't give a fuck if you're black. Stop being racist. So then everyone's getting new clothes. And Spider-Man's like, oh, where are you getting these new duds from? And it's like, oh, there's a machinery that gives you clothes. And so Spider-Man meanders over there and hops in, and he's like, do. And there's like this black orb, and he's like, the fuck is this? And then it possesses him essentially completely. And this is the Venom symbiote, by the way. But he's like, oh, this is cool. And then they get a call from Professor X as the whole world shakes, being like, Ultron's on the move. And even Colossus like feels this vibration partially because the village is like right there, and so things are in trouble. So Colossus goes and like kisses his new lover goodbye or whatever, and then Storm tries to like blast the thing, doesn't work. The X-Men try to like fight and hold off Ultron, but they're like having a real tough go. And then the Avengers and Fantastic Four like they all hop in and go, and they're like there's discussions about people's abilities and Spider-Man's new uniform and Ben Grimm not doing his thing and how Spider-Man's like new clothes can like modify them with his thought or whatever. And then Reed Richards had some like thoughts about everything that's going on to get you caught up if you haven't followed like all 12 months of this fucking thing. Anyway, they crash into Colossus. Who's trying to go up and help, and so then they all join forces with the X-Men, and they go and they're fighting and they're not doing too well because it's Ultron. And then all of a sudden, Reed Richards and Galactus and his little base like disappeared. Everyone's like, "The fuck?" And Reed Richards wanders over to see Galactus, and Galactus is like, "I have something to tell you. First, look, your baby's fine." So we see Sue and Franklin, and then the baby is like Victoria, I want to say, or Vanessa. Anyway. This guy has something to tell you. Meanwhile, Doom is like slightly recovered. He's wandering out of like this prison that he was in. He just blasts the shit out of the door. It goes. And then, so he goes, he releases Claw. There's like fight. Saj comes out from her, like, she recovers, but she goes to Johnny Storms to Colossus. That makes him sad eponymous. And then there is, let's see, everyone kind of reconnoiters. Reed comes back. He's like the bringer of life. He thinks that maybe they should let Galactus just destroy everything or destroy them so that he can stop being like a world destroyer. But then they talk about that for a while, and then he decides against it. And then Doom is like, I have an idea. Galactus is about to use his abilities. And so he takes Claw and like cuts him up and creates some sort of like magnification device or absorbing device. And then when Galactus goes to use they fight some more, they fight. And the Galactus is about to use, he devours his own ship planet thing. And then as he's doing that, Doom then uses this like device he made with the cut up claw, because claws just sound, so him like dissecting him doesn't kill him or anything. And he's like, now I will take all these powers on my own. And that wraps up issue number 8. All right, pick up with all the quote-unquote good guys hanging out, watching this whole shebang go down. And someone's like, don't look straight at it, it'll burn through your retinas or something, like looking into a solar eclipse. And, and they get a shot of them all with their skeletons because of x-rays or whatever. So all the power of Galactus doesn't go into Galactus. It actually gets shot over to Doom Base, and all the heroes are like, ruh-roh. So Captain Marvel speeds on over there because she's like can go travel at the speed of light. And she sees this like crazy contraption that Doom has set up with like the pieces of Claw. And he's absorbing all the power. And then Captain Marvel's trying to figure out what to do, and Professor Xavier connects with her so that Reed Richards can see what she sees and kind of give her advice. But then Doctor Doom comes out of like gaining all this power, and he's become like omniscient, and like he understands all the molecules in the world or something, and he's just like experiencing some sort of crazy thing where he's doing all this stuff, and then he's like, wait a second, there's someone here. And Captain Marvel's like, ruh-roh. So I apologize, I'm sick. The heroes head into like this broken shuttle, and Magneto uses his powers to like carry it on over to the Doom Base. And while they're traveling, No, they get into some arguments. Magneto and Captain America get into it, and Wolverine backs at Magneto because they're homies, I guess. Even though Wolverine has hated Magneto the entire time in his existence, but I guess here it's different because they're a sea smoose. Doctor Doom, meanwhile, is just like thinking about the Beyonder, thinking about Claw, like talking to him a little bit with like he's just ahead now or something. And then he like revitalizes himself. The good guys like burst into Doom Base and are smashing it up a little bit, and they find Captain Marvel. She's like solid light and she's frozen. They find Claw, and then the whole place starts shaking up, and they see that Doom is like traveling with his new gained powers as fast as he can to like the little the little break in reality where the Beyonder's like looking into the whole situation. And they're trying to gain what's going on. They're trying to rescue people. They got to like escape. The whole place is crashing down around them. Colossus sees that the people of like Saj's village are in trouble, and so he calls out to Johnny because Colossus is a child. Like he's like 18, right? But he's got this like far boy, like Eastern Europe or Eastern Russian, like communist farm boy like appreciation of like the do-goodery of the world, and Johnny Storm's like a man whore. So Colossus is like, hey, your girlfriend's like in trouble, and Johnny Storm's like, yeah, I don't give a crap about that. So Colossus is like, I will go. And so he starts throwing off, and the whole place like shakes some more as Doom gets closer and closer to the Beyonder. And then we see like a face off between them, and Doom's starting to get beat up by the Beyonder. He's like, oh, I have one more chance. So he like astral projects into like the circle of superheroes. Was like, we could beat the Beyonder, and but I need your help and all this stuff. And so please just join with me. And Magneto's like, yeah, all right. But then Hawkeye and Iron Man and Wasp jump him, and then they all get into it again with him. But then, and so Doom loses and crashes down to the earth, and then he gets like smashed by the Beyonder. And then we get like a whole thing about like his mom and her sorcery and how she was trapped by Mephisto and hit the combination of technology and magic. We get like Doom's whole life story in case you haven't been following. And he's like torn to pieces, and his little device that he maintains his like physical structure with, like his armor that he wears all the time, like it's taken away, and Doom Base is just getting turned up. So everyone's like fighting out of there. They rescue the bad guys, even though they're bad guys. And Wolverine's like, "Oh, I appreciate you more, Captain America." And I'm like, "Bro, these two mother effers like they like served together in like multiple wars. Like, I just feel like this is kind of silly to be completely honest." Oh no, my thing froze. Hold on. I had started my computer crash, and I was reading the digital uploads of the comic. All right, so yeah, so Wolverine appreciates Captain America for saving people, even though again, he's I don't know this. I have a lot of issues with Secret War. I don't necessarily want to get into them. It's just kind of bad. I like that it kind of like moves stuff forward with several of these franchises, but in terms of the X-Men, it's just like the person who wrote Secret Wars clearly did not have like a firm grasp of like the X-Men and their relationships. Like a lot of it's just kind of like, what is happening? And it got some stuff right, but outside of like the Colossus issue, which carried forward, a lot of it was just kind of like, all right, whatever. And so it's a more of a, with the Avengers stuff too, I don't know, it's just, I don't know. Okay, so anyway, so they rescue everybody. They get out. They're all standing around. They look up into the sky, and there's like this burst of light, like the birth of Jesus Christ in the air. And then giant Doom shows up, and it's like, Doom, and everyone's like, get ready to fight. And then Doom like shrinks back down. He's like, no, behold, the war is over. I am no longer the Doom you knew, and the Beyonder is gone. But is he gone? We'll see. Anyway, he takes off his like famous mask, and there he's got like a very handsome face, and everyone's like, and I don't know, maybe it's the first time we ever saw like the face of Doom, which is kind of poetious. But he's like, behold, I have merged with the Beyonder, I have taken his powers, and I've moved past like all earthly desires, and yada yada yada. And he's talking to the heroes and having like a chit chat with them. Meanwhile, the villains are all standing off to the side, and they're like, look at that Gamook Doom talking to the heroes. Why is he talking to the heroes? What do we should do? Blah, 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 blah. And then Chantress is just laying there looking sexy, and everyone's kind of like arguing with each other and talking about stuff. And then Molecule Man's like, all right, you know what? I'll take care of all this. I'll go take care of Doom. And so he like blasts all the heroes off somewhere and then flies over to Doom. And then he's talking to Doom, and Doom seems like very unconcerned about him and whatnot. And then Doom shows him like this world. And then he like touches his face. Like they doing a lot of stuff, and he like unleashes the power of Molecule Man, because Molecule Man is like much more powerful. So I guess like before he could only manipulate molecules of non-organic material, but in reality he could manipulate all molecules ever, even organic material. But he was holding himself back because of like issues in his heart, and so Doom like releases that, and then he like nopes on out of there. And so Molecule Man's like, oh, I can do anything now, like I'm so powerful. All right, you guys want to go? Let's go. And he creates like this barge, and they fly off. Meanwhile, the heroes, after getting blasted by Molecule Man, they are flying around, so the people who can fly are flying, and then Iron Man's carrying like a sack made of Reed Richards. The rest of the heroes inside. It's pretty pro-Washington, I'm not gonna lie. They fly back off to Doom Base again, or a different Doom Base or something, and they're kind of planning and talking about like previous issues and what's been going on and everything, and having a chit chat about all that. Meanwhile, Molecule Man goes to that part of like Denver, Colorado that Spider-Woman was from Earth, that people are like freaking out and stuff, and he's creating like power and water, and they're talking about what they're going to do and next steps, and people are arguing and stuff. And then he just picks the whole thing up, like the whole section of Denver, Colorado that got removed from Earth, and he just like takes them out of there, and they fly off. And Spider-Woman, I'm trying to remember what her name is. I don't think we get it in this. Maybe we got it for a second. It's like, oh my gosh, look at that. Meanwhile, Colossus is still thinking about Saj and everything to do with that, and he's like, I'm out of here. So he teleports, or he gets on like a hover bike of some sort and like gets out of there. Hulk is taking a little napsy, and as Colossus leaves, this little light, which is obviously the Beyonder, goes and possesses Hulk. And so he's wandering around, and then Spider-Woman sees him, and she follows him and tries to stop him to question him because he's acting kind of weird. And then the Hulk like touches her face, knocks her down, and then the Beyonder possesses her. And so then she meanders back to where Claw is and where Captain Marvel is and stuff. And Captain Marvel finally like comes back together, I think. Anyway, we see Steve Rogers just like taking a nap with his shirt off, looking all sexy and stuff. And then he runs over when he hears Spider-Woman scream, and everyone else shows up. And she's pointing at this sign on the wall. And the sign on the wall is, "You are summoned to the Tower of Doom at dusk tomorrow." And the Tower of Doom, they're like, what is the Tower of Doom? And they look outside, and there's this giant, like, ridiculous-looking, like, rock structure. Meanwhile, at the Tower of Doom, Doctor Doom and Claw are just, like, chit-chatting about whatever. Doctor Doom doesn't want to go to sleep because his power is so mighty that if he goes to sleep, he might tear apart the fabric of reality or whatever. So he's going to, like, rest his eyes for a moment, and Claw's going to, like, watch him and make sure nothing bad happens. Elsewhere, at the little village with Saj, she, like, wakes up, and Colossus comes in, gives her some flowers, and then they presumably fuck. So... back over at Doom Base, Wolverine and Nightcrawler have a little chitty chat about Colossus and love and Kitty and his heart and all this stuff. And then all the heroes meet up. They get on this like barge and they head over to the Tower of Doom where they find Claw. He leads them to Doom. Doom tells them he's gonna like he is beyond. Again, he like reiterates that he's beyond like mortal cares or whatever. He brings King back and then sends him away so he can't cause any more problems. And then he talks about how, you know, they can just go and do whatever they're going to do. And Doom's going to like contemplate his own little thing and not worry about it. But if they have to leave, and if they come back, he might kill them and be done with them forever. So the heroes all leave and they're talking about what they're going to do and what's going on. And they notice Spider-Woman's gone, right? If you remember, Spider-Woman's possessed by the Beyonder. So Captain America goes back to find her. He finds Doom with his like shirt off, just like reading a newspaper. Claws standing around, and there's like pictures of Doom's like mother on the back wall. And so they talk about that for a little bit, and that makes Captain America kind of like concerned about stuff. So Claw goes to find Spider-Woman. He gets trapped in one of her like spider nets that she creates, and then the Beyonder transfers out of her and goes into Claw. So then as they're like chit-chatting or whatever, Claw returns and is like, "Oh yeah, Spider-Woman's over there, you can get her and go." And so Captain America does, and then they have a conversation, I think here. No, they have a conversation. Okay, so they head out of there. Meanwhile, after a coitus, Colossus and Saj are like kissing some more and talking, and then he gets summoned by Professor X, so he goes over to this like crazy meeting they're having. So they're all chit-chatting about what to do. They should fight Doom. Like Doom says he's beyond earthly cares, but in reality he still wants to like bring his mother back from Mephisto's like dark realm or whatever. So is he really beyond earthly cares? And so they have this like funny vote where it's like we can just leave or we can fight and stop him for good. And so then everyone decides they're going to fight except Colossus, who has like a whole internal struggle about wanting to like be in love and missing things and being sad and being like 18 and stuff and being selfish. And then he's like, "Fine, I'll fight too." And as soon as he says that, boom, everyone blows up. And this leads us to the final issue of Secret Wars where everyone's dead. Everyone's dead. They're all dead. There's a big hole. The people of Saj are watching and they look all stunned and whatnot. And then Dr. Doom's like, they couldn't just leave well enough alone. And Sim and Claw have like a conversation, and Dr. Doom feels all overwhelmed with power and stuff. And Claw's like being very nice and being like, "Oh, just rest here, my lord. Be at peace. Don't stress out too much." And then we head over to Molecule Man's little like floating island thingy. And the Enchantress goes to use the bathroom to take a bath, but in reality she's just getting a bunch of water, and then she's going to summon like one of her elementals or whatever, this water elemental, and this water elemental is sassy, and Enchantress doesn't like that very much. So then we get like in case it's like you're like, what is happening? That's pretty much what this is. It's a very detailed, easy to understand explanation from this like water elemental. So we get like the recap of how the whole thing started. So the Beyonder essentially is a creature from like another universe that is the Beyonder universe. And he was bored there and just kind of existed, running everything and whatnot. But then this crack opened, and there's this other universe where he's like no control or power over. And so it's like watching TV, right? He's just like watching what's going on. And the superheroes of Earth specifically like really intrigued him. And so after a bit, he decided he was going to like bring them all together and see what happened, essentially just on like on a whim. And so, he brought some people forcibly, some people like meandered over here because they're heroes. And then, he listened to like the feelings of their heart, like God, essentially. And so that's why Magneto ended up with the heroes, because his like heart is true and it's not selfish. Like he does, his means are a little extreme. you will. But like what he wants is good for people. And then the fighting and everything that's going on. And then we find out that Doom and the Beyonder fought, and that Doom won and absorbed the power of the Beyonder, even though it looked like he looked like he lost. And then, the Elemental's getting sassy with Enchantress, so she like shoves her into the pool and like burns her up a little bit, so she can see that all the heroes died, and that Doom, and that the Beyonder is actually in Claw. So if you were confused about that before, you get like confirmation that Beyonder is possessing people at Claw, that they're planning stuff, and that looks like the Beyonder is going to try to like not double cross per se, but get his powers back from Doom. And then the Absorbing Man like bangs on the door, is like, "Hey, I gotta piss," or something, and Enchantress like, "All right, that's fine." And then she sends the Elemental away. The whole place gets kind of rocked for a minute. Does it get rocked at the moment of the room? Oh, no, sorry, it doesn't get rocked. They're just, Lizard Man's freaking out because him and Claw were like best friends, and Claw's not there anymore, and Wasp isn't there, and he's like tired of everything. And so everyone's kind of fighting, and then Volcano like gets in the way and is like, "Leave him alone," and she goes up and it's like, treats him like a little pet, and Dr. Rock gets mad and like, he's going to start fighting. The Molecule Man's like, "Hey, you better watch yourself." And then while Molecule Man's kind of like calming everybody down and getting him going, the Enchantress like summons Volcana. Part of his Enchantress is like done with this BS. She like wants to go home, so she uses like some of her powers to get Volcana to like wander off with her, and then they into like a realm, and like part of like not into a realm, just like in a park nearby. So part of Enchantress's deal is that Volcana was going to give her everything, which includes her like life force. So she's going to absorb all of Volcana's like life force and then teleport out of there. So meanwhile, Molecule Man takes everyone outside and is like, "Look, there's stars in the sky. I told you I was going to take you home." And Doc Ock is like, "Oh, wow, the stars are there," because there weren't stars in like the Beyonder realm, remember? They're at the very beginning. And so Doc Ock still doesn't care. He goes to attack Molecule Man. So Molecule Man like takes all this stuff, like Doc Ock was going to use to like crush him, and like covers Dr. Octopus and traps him in like the ground. And then Lizard Man's like, "Oh, Enchantress took Volcano away from here." And so Molecule Man and Lizard, they like run over there, and they Enchantress is like, "Ruh-roh." And so she teleports out of there, but then Lizard Man teleports with her because he's like leaping at her. And so what she does is she knocks he claws at her face, which is like unpardonable sin for her because of her beauty. And so she beats the crap out of him, and then she absorbs all his life energy to cure herself, but it's not enough to like teleport out of there per se yet. But that kind of saps him of all his energy and whatnot. Oh no, actually they teleport. She teleports them back to the Beyonder world. Okay. Meanwhile, Doom is like kind of napping, but then Claw kind of wakes him up and he's like, "Oh, I almost lost control." And he's like, "I have so much power, I don't know what to do." And then Claw's like, "Oh, I got an idea. Maybe you give me some. Oh, no. Right here, he's like, "I have concerns about the heroes still being alive." And Dr. Doom's like, "No, they're dead. They're dead for sure." And he's like, "But let me propose a situation. So what if Saj saw the destruction of the heroes, and then she rides over there on like a giant dragon looking thing and finds Colossus, who's not quite fully dead yet, because at the last moment, apparently he transformed into like living steel, which is what he does. And so she was able to use all her life force to resurrect her second lover of the week." Which is Colossus. So she dies, but then Colossus gets resurrected, and then Colossus finds Stretcho, Reed Richards, and puts him in like the healing chamber. And because of his like ability to be stretchy, he didn't fully take the full blast either. So then he resurrects, and then Reed is super smart, and he's able, like as the bringer of life or whatever the thing Galactus said, he's able to get all the rest of the heroes inside the healing chambers because they weren't like fully destroyed yet either, like their life essence. And then they're all back alive, and so the heroes are going to come attack, and Dr. Doom's like freaking out about it. He's like, "No, it's impossible. There's no way that could possibly happen." And then Claw's like, "Well, maybe subconsciously you didn't want to kill all the heroes because something. So maybe you didn't do a full blast, so you didn't actually destroy them completely so that they can do whatever." And he's like, "No, this is madness." And then they like chit chat about that some more, and Doom's like mad, and Claw's like giggly about it because it's actually the Beyonder. And I don't know, maybe the Beyonder used some of his powers to make this happen, like change reality or whatnot. They go back and forth about that. And then Dr. Doom is like convinced they're dead, but then Thor's hammer bashes through the wall, and he's like, "Oh, the hammer of Thor!" And then he talks about, he's like, "I will just destroy them again." And then Dr. Doom is like doing something, and the power starts running amok, and Dr. Doom's freaking out. And then Claw's like, "Well, give me a tiny bit of your power, and that'll help you like keep it restrained." And he's like, "All right, fine." So then the Beyonder gets a little bit of his powers back. And we see the heroes, they are alive. All that like hypothetical nonsense that Claw was talking about is actually true. They're all totally fine and alive. And so they're charging, and then Claw goes out with a little bit of the Beyonder power back, and he summons like crazy monsters and brings Ultron back to life and whatnot. And then we get this like cool battle. They're just like fight, big monsters, fighting Ultron. Wasp ends up going inside Ultron and like tearing him apart from the inside, and there's like more monster fighting and stuff. And then Captain America knocks Claw out, but it's all part of the Beyonder's plan because he's like tee hee hee and like follows him in there. And then Doom's just like chilling, drinking wine inside his tower, and Captain America like rolls in there, and they go back and forth. And Captain America like blasts the crap. Oh no, sorry, Doom blasts the crap out of Captain America, like obliterating him. But then he pops back up, and he's like, "How is this possible?" And he like kills him again, and he comes back alive again. And then Captain America goes and bashes him, and then like the power cosmic or whatever, because Doom going crazy, and then Doom's like, "Oh, it's too late. I'm losing all control of the power." And Captain America's like, "Let me help you, Doom, before it's too late," because he's Captain America. And so they reach out to touch each other's hands, but at the last second, the Beyonder bursts out of Claw and goes and actually absorbs all the power that Doctor Doom was gonna give him. So he takes all the power, and Captain America's like, "What the heck?" And it's the Beyonder. And so then, and then the Beyonder like teleports Claw and Doom out of there, leaving just Captain America and like the crew. And so they all get back together, and they're all chit chatting. And Zaj is like a dead because she used all her life force to like resurrect Colossus, and so he's super sad about that. He's just like kneeling by the grave, being sad that he lost like one of his true loves, right? Because there's Kitty, I guess, kind of, even though it's like childhood. And so then. For some reason, Kurt Wagner, who was like a Catholic priest, still doesn't understand love and loss. So Wolverine has to be like, leave him alone. Like, don't bother Colossus, let him be. The rest of the crew, they go back and they're like exploring the Doom base, and they're like talking about what to do next. At some point, Hulk got his like leg bashed up for some reason, so he's wearing, which doesn't make any sense, but whatever. And then all the characters have like new costumes. Like Storm's got like a sexy thing that like gives her a lot of cleavage action, and then Rogue's got like her new costume, and Janet Van Dyne, and then Spider-Man gets kind of concerned because he's like, wait, that's the costume changing machine? And they're like, yeah, what did you use? And he's like, not that. It's like ruh-roh. Because the Hulk thing is stupid. We see him walking around with like crutches, and I'm like, what? Stupid. And then Doc Connor shows up with his like one arm missing and whatever, and that's the Lizard. So then I guess like when the Enchantress stole his like his life force, it like reverted him back to, it just took away like the lizard men stuff so that he would go back to his normal self. Hold on. Sorry, I was changing Umizoomi for my kid. Okay. So Doc Connor's back. Oh, and then Lockheed's back, and he's got like a girlfriend or something, like another dragon, so that's Poesh. Yeah, you forgot Lockheed was here, right? So did I. He was there for like a minute, and then he's got like the whole 12, like the year essentially that this came out. There's some back and forth with Xavier and Storm about who's actually going to run the X-Men when they get back, and how he wants to be more a part of something. And they talk about, I don't know, feelings and like the power of belief or whatever. And so Captain America, whose shield broke at some point, which I don't remember it breaking, but it broke, he like just believes that the shield will like get better, and then it does, and he's super psyched about that. So okay. And finally, how's everyone gonna get home? So Reed finds that like there's he can use something about like the ship that's orbiting the planet that they came in originally, has some sort of ability to like teleport everybody back to like Earth, and then they can like have, through the power of faith or belief, they can like separate and go their own separate ways. So then he sends people back like in little groups. So like Peter, Spider-Woman, Connors, Hulk, and Magneto go first, and then the X-Men are about to go, and Colossus is still sad Hippopotamus, and so Charles like goes to talk to him a little bit and kind of convinces him to come along. And so they go, and then that other dragon that Lockheed was banging supposedly goes too, and there's like an explosion. Everyone's like, oh no, what happened? It's like, oh no, it's fine. And then, and then the Avengers are all take off, and then we see She-Hulk. She's dressed. She's got a Fantastic Four costume, and they're like, "What's going on with that?" And the thing is, like, I'm going to stay here and kind of figure my stuff out, and like this device will keep working because it's just like sitting around in space. So just tell me how it works, and I'm going to try to get a better understanding of my powers and why I'm transferring me to human and not, and just kind of like hang out here. There's that village nearby, and there's food, and I'm not that concerned about it. And She-Hulk's going to go be like the bruiser for the Fantastic Four, that's a fun run. So that's a fun change. So. Reed is like, okay, but then he has like thoughts about it. He's like, oh, if only Ben knew, but I'll let him figure it out on his own. And so She-Hulk, Reed, and Johnny, they teleport out of there, and then the whole series ends with Ben just like sitting on a rock thinking about life and quoting FDR. That's the end of Secret Wars. It's one of those things where I feel like I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Secret Wars. It was interesting concept, and the whole thing is just kind of like silly and nonsensical, and stuff just like happens, and it was like an excuse to like really mix things up, which it's it's good. They invested a lot of time trying to like not reinvent the formula, but kind of like change things up with some of these more stale franchises like the Fantastic Four to get things a little more interesting, or to kind of make just mix things up. So that's cool, but at the same time, the whole thing is just like if you're familiar with like I can't believe someone at the time who's read all these comics, because again, like Fantastic Four, I almost know like virtually nothing about it. The Avengers I'm much more familiar with. The Avengers like barely exist in this thing besides Steve Rogers just being played as like no one has ever heard of Steve Rogers before, even though a lot of these characters like obviously have spent time with Steve Rogers in the past. And then the X-Men are written just like almost like someone who's never even like glanced at an X-Men comic before. So I have a lot of qualms with that. And then the villains, I mean, who really cares, right? But I don't. Doom seems legit. I don't know. I've again, I'm not a Fantastic Four guy, so that my experiences with Doom are like very limited. But anyway, so go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later.